Chris Frankel, Director of Programming for TRX, and welcome to this week's weekly sequence. Let's get after it. This week's weekly sequence is going to take you through 3 moves that really force you to focus on what should be stable and what should be mobile. The first one is a new one for us, which is called the TRX Half-Kneeling Rollout. So Anne's going to go ahead and take one knee, and we have a towel on the floor to make it a little bit easier on her knee. Her right knee is going to go down onto the towel. You notice that she's directly underneath the anchor point, and her handles are adjusted to about knee height. So the starting position here is making sure that that rear toe is tucked underneath, and I'm going to move it right behind that knee. Good. That knee is right underneath the hip, and we're going to make sure that that glute is turned on, so make sure it's nice and engaged. Core is engaged here. That front leg is straight out in front. We want to make sure that her shoulders are square to me, her hips are square to me, and I'm going to have her walk that front foot out even a little bit more. We want that ankle slightly in front of that knee as we start this exercise here. Now that she's in this position here, core is turned on, she's going to roll out at a 45-degree angle as far as feels comfortable for her. The idea, keeping that front leg working straight forward, that down leg's glute turned on. Go ahead and go through 3 or 4 more reps. And the idea is core is engaged, hip is engaged, and rolling out at this 45-degree angle is going to create some mobility into those hips. She's getting a nice little stretch on the inner thigh of the up leg, and she's also getting a loaded stretch on that hip flexor. Do 1 or 2 more reps. The focus is on keeping the core nice and stable, shoulders pulled down and back, and creating mobility into those hips from both a loaded core and loaded lower body. You would do this on both sides before moving on, but in the interest of time, we're going to move into the next exercise, which is going to be our hip press. So Anne's going to go ahead, and now that she's created some mobility and some strength on both sides, she's going to sit on the ground facing the anchor point, roll back, drop both heels in at the same time, and now she's going to position herself with knees bent and hips bent to a 90-90 position, so her knees are right on top of her hips. Give me a little bit of slack there, good. And now since I've got this towel, what we're going to do is I'm going to fold it over again. I'm going to have it put it in between her knees, and she's going to try and crush that towel the whole time, and she's going to notice just a little bit more core engagement as we get here. The more stable this core is going to be, she's going to be able to notice a little bit more extension in those hips as we go through the hip press. So start with core engaged, deep breath out, in, exhale, and then lift up. And the whole time as you go through reps, she's going to go through about 3 or 4 reps here. The whole time she's trying to squeeze that towel as hard as she can and bring her hips up as high as she can, so she's going into full hip extension. At the top, you'll notice she's getting a nice line from her shoulders to her hips to her knees. A little bit of pause at the top to now put some strength into that hip that we created some mobility on with that previous move. 1 more rep. Nice and strong at the top, squeezing the towel all the way down and relax. You'll notice that she worked on a movement that was looking a lot like a hip hinge from a nice stable core and engaged glutes. So go ahead, take the heels out. The third exercise here is going to be a combination of an overhead back extension and an overhead squat. So now that we've created some mobility in those hips and we've created some stability into that core, the first move is going to be that overhead back extension that you've seen earlier this week. Drop those hips back. Come up, integrating hip extension with shoulder flexion at the top. Do 1 more overhead back extension. We've got that hip hinge. Do 1 more rep here. And as she goes back to the bottom, notice to come up, that hip press that we just practiced can be used as a cue to bring those hips through. Now at the top, what she's going to do is drop into an overhead squat. So now we're going to take advantage of some of that mobility we created with that half-kneeling rollout in the beginning. And now we'll just alternate back and forth. We'll do an overhead back extension, working on that hip hinge, come to the top, now going down into your squat pattern. You'll notice what happens here the entire time is that core needs to stay stable and those hips become mobile once in a hinging pattern and once in a squatting pattern. Put those 3 moves together, half-kneeling rollout to focus on mobility, hip press to focus on strength and stability, and the overhead back extension to overhead squat incorporates stability and mobility into a single exercise. Thanks for tuning in to this week's weekly sequence, where we're really focused on incorporating hip mobility and hip strength to improve your endurance performance. Make sure you check out this month's TRXtv download, Condition to Win.